Here's a little taste
for extreme times.
of the Spaceman.
From space with the Spaceman on AM 640. Spaceman AM 640 in a view from space. My resident, now what I'm calling my resident numerologist, SR, writes, "Hey, Space, hope you're doing well. Yes, there are 3 Friday the 13th this year of 2012, January, April, and July. First month is January. 4th month is April, which they occur in. And the 7th month is July. That is the 1st month plus 3 months. The 4th month plus 3 months equals the 7th month. The 3 months are separated by 3 each. The royal number has it. Later Space, signed SR." Yes, numerology, astrology, and sacred geometry are the 3 guides. Whether you know it or not, the rulers of our world are guided by. So as I was saying before the break, the number 13 has been considered unlucky as far back as, well, biblical times. Some say the concept of Friday the 13th being an unlucky day is linked with events that include the Great Flood during the time of Noah, that it actually started to rain on a Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th was the day the languages all became confused at the Tower of Babel. It was also the day Eve tempted Adam with the apple. And of course, the date was a Friday the 13th that Judas Iscariot, who was the 13th guest at the Last Supper, betrayed Jesus Christ. The day of the crucifixion, when Christ died on the cross, was also a Friday the 13th. It even goes back further than biblical times, all the way back, in fact, to Norse mythology, which featured 13 gods who all met very horrific ends. According to the Norse myth, once upon a time, at Valhalla, the heaven of the Norse gods, the gods were invited for a party by Balder, the god of joy and gladness. There were 12 Norse gods, including Balder, partying. When the party was in full swing, the god of mischief, Loki, walked in. He was the uninvited 13th god. Loki showed his anger at not being invited by arranging Hoder, the blind god of darkness, to kill Balder, the god of joy and gladness, with a poisonous mistletoe arrow. It's believed that at that moment, the earth plunged into darkness and evil took over the reign here on earth. The name of this day of the week, Friday, has its origin, in fact, in the Norse goddess of fertility known as Frigga. The scientific word conjured up for the fear of Friday the 13th is even called Frigga paraskevidecatriophobia. Triskaidekaphobia simply means the fear of the number 13. Frigga paraskevidecatriophobia actually is the fear of Friday the 13th. Now, the events that occurred on October 13th in the year 1307, which was a Friday again, according to the Gregorian calendar, although the Gregorian calendar was not introduced until 1582. It's also said to be linked to the Friday 13th superstition. It was a day when the officers of King Philip IV of France, with the help of Pope Clement V, rounded up and arrested the Knights Templar along with their 23rd and supposed last Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, for heresy, blasphemy, and many other charges. The truth was this, that the Knights Templar the actual forerunners of today's Freemasonry. And since they, of course, were a powerful banking cabal back in those times, had indebted the King of France, Philip IV, and the Roman Catholic Church with gargantuan loans carrying super high interest rates, which mounted so high these loans could no longer be paid back. So the Knights Templar were simply outlawed for these two powerhouses, the King of France and the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, to wiggle out of the loans. They simply outlawed the people who they owed the money to. Not unlike exactly what's happening right now today, all over the world, to the world's economies, except for one little point about the outlawing of the bankers' part. I mean, wouldn't that get Greece, Spain, Portugal, the Eurozone, America, soon to be followed by countless other economies, wouldn't that get them off the hook in a minute? Why don't they just outlaw the bankers? It'll never happen, but I just thought I'd point that out. It happened back in 1307 with indebtedness, and it's happening again today. There's nothing new under the sun. It's simply history repeating itself. The fear of Friday the 13th continues in many places around the world. According to stats, up to 4 billion people of us, 7 billion, are either superstitious or fear Friday the 13th. There's also a lot of money lost in business because people refuse to shop, refuse to travel, or take risks on that day. What's more is symptoms of this fear range from mild anxiety and a nagging sense of doom to full-blown panic attacks. For instance, in Brazil, Friday the 13th in August is considered unluckier than any other Friday the 13th because agosto, the Spanish word for August, rhymes with desgosto, the Spanish word for sorrow. It's easy to blame Friday the 13th for unfortunate events that happen, but this day, in some cultures, is not always believed to be unlucky in history. The ancient Egyptians thought the number 13 was actually lucky because they believed that the 13th stage of life was related to the afterlife. Now, I've touched on this many times on A View from Space on Talk Radio, AM 640, that the number 13 represents reincarnation. I've often referred it on this show as the cult number because they believe in reincarnation. When it appears in news stories displayed on your television set in pictures, the number 13, say for instance on a vehicle or someone's sports jersey, they love the sports jersey, that's why. It carries numbers. Numbers are messages. The adepts are being sent these messages that the occult is controlling that particular event. Or sometimes even the personage whom the news story is about is not dead, but has in fact assumed another life. A number 13 will be shown somewhere in the news story in the picture, maybe written on a tank or a license plate. This occurred during the coverage of Muammar Gaddafi during the Libyan takedown. After the decline of the ancient Egyptian civilization, the number 13 was still associated with death. but in a more fearful way. Again, here you have the Illuminati covering their true beliefs with confusing counter-information. Also, in the Islamic world, Friday is seen as the holiest day of the week, of course. It's set aside for communal worship where Muslims attend the mosque. For people living in countries around the Arabian Peninsula, as well as Iraq, Friday is seen as a day of rest. Some people believe that the number 13 and black cats, which are associated with Friday the 13th, are symbols of femininity. The myth of Friday the 13th has been not only kept alive, but in fact promoted by Hollywood in movies like the American cult horror film franchise Friday the 13th, with all of its sequels. The image of a hockey goalie mask is associated with the Friday the 13th franchise. This is very interesting and revealing. At the same time, few know or are aware that since Tuesday the 13th, Mounts 13 in Spanish, the movie Friday the 13th was actually renamed to Tuesday the 13th in many Spanish-speaking countries, because the day of bad luck falls on Tuesday the 13th and not a Friday the 13th. Although some countries did keep the original Hollywood title in Spanish, which is Viernes 13. No matter how it began, the fear of Friday the 13th gets people panicked. Here's a few facts about just how much of a grip this superstition has on the world. Billions worldwide are affected by a fear of Friday the 13th. Many of them so much so that they won't even drive a car. They won't even leave their house or even get out of bed. History records that both Napoleon Bonaparte and President Herbert Hoover were infamously stricken with this fear. 4 of the 12 movies in the Friday the 13th franchise were released on Friday the 13th, including the original in 1980, and was the sequel, the same, in 1981, released on a Friday the 13th. And the remake that appeared in 2009 in the theaters had a release date of Friday the 13th. More on the 13th when I return on A View from Space. This is Talk Radio, AM 640.
So there you have it, A View from Space with the original Spaceman that came on 6:40 a.m. every Saturday night and gave much truth to us all. So a big salute goes to him. And if you'd like to hear more of these shows, comment down below, because there is much knowledge I wish to give out through A View from Space. Spaceman 2.0, and I'm out.